Nothing alive stays still, but the mind tries. It wraps around things, people, places, outcomes, and calls it certainty. It plans, it repeats, it attaches meaning to timing, symbols to patterns, identity to roles. It tries to make something last long enough to feel like home. But home isn't found through holding, it's found in movement. And most people weren't taught how to stay with what moves, so they tighten. They hold on to routines because they fear irrelevance. They hold on to people because they fear grief. They hold on to identity because they fear being unrecognizable to themselves. But nothing stays. Not because it's unstable, but because it's real. And reality moves. What was meaningful shifts. What was safe evolves. What was true becomes incomplete. And that's not a failure. It's the cost of being alive. Stillness can't be manufactured through effort. It only comes when effort stops. But most people don't trust that. Stillness, to them, looks like disorder. Movement looks like threat. So they try to lock things down, control the process, define the relationship, schedule the growth, predict the unknown, and for a while, it works. They get routines, they get definitions, they get comfort. But comfort doesn't hold life. It only slows it, just enough to forget that change was always waiting. Eventually, something breaks. The relationship changes. The meaning fades. The role ends. And when it does, they grieve the loss as if the change shouldn't have happened. But it should have. Because the loss wasn't unnatural. The grip was. What slipped away wasn't stolen. It simply moved like it was always going to. And that's where stillness begins. Not in the ability to hold things still, but in the ability to move with what leaves, to release without punishing, to observe without controlling, to love without caging. Because nothing that's meant to stay requires a grip, and nothing alive will tolerate one. Permanence was never part of the design. Not for relationships, not for identity, not for peace. Everything moves, not as punishment, as rhythm. But rhythm isn't what most people were taught. They were taught repetition, rehearsal, control, hold the feeling, hold the moment, hold the self together long enough to be seen, understood, approved of. But rhythm doesn't wait for approval. It changes. Without permission, without announcement. And when that change begins, the first instinct is to resist it. Try to hold the person closer. Try to explain the shift away. Try to rebuild the old routine as if the new version of self hasn't already arrived. It feels responsible. It feels like trying. But it's not trying. It's refusing. Refusing to let things evolve without supervision. Refusing to let what mattered become what passed. Refusing to admit that time isn't something you can reason with. And that refusal has a cost, because holding what's meant to move doesn't preserve it. It distorts it. The relationship becomes a performance. The process becomes a loop. The identity becomes a mask, frozen in a time no longer real. And the longer it's held, the more it breaks. It starts small. Disconnection, fatigue, mild resentment. Then it gets louder. Conflict, withdrawal, collapse. But the collapse isn't sudden. It's slow. The structure was always decaying beneath the grip. Only now does the light reach it. That's when the truth becomes visible. This was never still. It was just paused by force, and the force is running out. That's what peace actually is. The moment control becomes unnecessary. Not because things stayed, because you stop needing them to. The mind doesn't like that. It wants answers. It wants to know what the future looks like before it agrees to let go. So, it hesitates, and labels the hesitation wisdom. It says, let me wait a bit longer. Let me be sure. Let me hold on to what I've already built. But peace doesn't arrive through preparation. It arrives through surrender, and surrender is not a gesture. It's not letting go once. It's learning to let go as a default, to stop measuring how long something stayed as proof of how real it was, to stop mistaking longevity for value, to stop confusing stillness with tightness. Because the more something is loved, the more it should move, freely, unwatched, unmanaged. This isn't passive, it's precise. It means knowing when something is no longer here, even if it hasn't left yet. It means being honest when something is ended, even if the form is still present. Not everything that's still around is still alive. And pretending otherwise is what creates the real grief. Grief doesn't come from endings. It comes from resistance to them, from trying to keep the chapter open after the page is turned, from clinging to a version of life that no longer exists. Because letting it go would leave a silence too big to hold. But that silence is the beginning of something real. It doesn't need to be filled. It doesn't need to be labeled. It just needs to be allowed. Because what shows up after the release isn't more control. It's movement, newness, rhythm. The kind that doesn't demand promises. The kind that doesn't shrink to be loved. The kind that doesn't need to stay to be valuable. That rhythm was always there, but it couldn't enter a space still filled with what refused to move. And that's the final clarity. Nothing was lost. It was just never yours to hold. Eventually, everything that tried to be held either breaks or leaves. What's left is not absence, it's stillness. Not the stillness people chase through effort. Not the stillness that comes from control, a different kind. The kind that remains when nothing needs to be held in place anymore. This isn't detachment, it's recognition. That peace was never about keeping things. It was about not mistaking motion for loss. Most people never get there, not because they can't, because they're still waiting for something to stay. A relationship, a version of self, a season of life, something to anchor to and say, this finally won't move. But it will, because movement is law, not emotional, not personal, just structural. And peace only becomes real when that's no longer treated as a threat. Not everything is supposed to last. Not everything is supposed to stabilize. Not every answer is supposed to stay relevant once it arrives. And that doesn't mean nothing matters. It means it all matters differently. Not as possession, not as permanence, just as presence, a moment, a person, a truth. Here, for now. Gone when it's gone. That's what the mind resists most. It wants to know how long. It wants to rehearse endings in advance. It wants to protect the self from the full experience of change. But the self isn't fragile. It only becomes fragile when it tries to stop what's built to move. And when that grip ends, so does the resistance. Not suddenly, not heroically. Just gradually, the energy spent on control gets returned to observation. And from that place, life starts to feel different. Not safer, not clearer, just lighter. No story to carry, no script to protect, no structure to defend. Now there's room for what comes, for what leaves, for what was never meant to be defined. There's no need to prepare for loss, because loss isn't loss anymore. It's transition, it's rhythm, it's the rest of the process. The same process that brought it in is the one taking it out. And the one who no longer fights that rhythm doesn't need to be brave, just quiet. Because that's all that was ever needed. Not mastery, not insight, not control. Just enough stillness to stop interrupting the motion. And enough trust to let what stays, stay, without holding it hostage to fear. That's what remains. No grip, no grasping. No need to freeze life just to feel close to it. Just presence, carried by something that doesn't need to be held to be real.